The impossible engine failure, the quantum storm hit without warning, turning the peaceful void of deep space into a writhing mass of purple energy that defied every law of physics. Captain Alina Vasquez had learned in her 25 years of commanding. Starships, the research vessel Horizon's Edge, bucked and twisted like a living thing as waves of quantum energy crashed against its reinforced hull, each impact sending shockwaves through the ship's superstructure. Report. Vasquez shouted over the screaming alarms, her weathered hands gripping the command chair as another surge nearly threw her from her seat. The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, their faces illuminated by the angry red glow of emergency lighting and the eerie purple radiance streaming through the main view screen. Quantum field fluctuations are off the charts, Captain, called Dr. Sarah Kim from the science station, her usually calm demeanor cracking under the strain. The storm appeared out of nowhere, completely surrounding us. It's like nothing in our databases. Commander Alex Torres, the ship's first officer, looked up from his tactical display with growing concern. Hull integrity holding at 92%, but the quantum fields are interfering with our navigation systems. We're effectively blind out here. The ship lurched again, more violently this time, and sparks erupted from several control panels. In the engine room far below, Chief Engineer Marcus Chen felt his heart skip a beat as he watched the quantum drive's output readings dance wildly across his monitors. The massive cylindrical chamber that housed the ship's primary power source hummed with an ominous resonance that made his teeth ache. Engineering to bridge, Marcus spoke into his CUM unit, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. We've got serious problems down here. The quantum drive is experiencing cascade resonance failure. The containment field is destabilizing. Captain. Vasquez's voice crackled back through the speakers. Explain it in terms I can understand, Chief. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead as he studied the scrolling data. The quantum storm is creating a feedback loop with our drive system. Every time we try to stabilize the containment field, the external quantum fluctuations push it further out of alignment. It's like trying to tune a violin while someone else keeps changing the strings. How long do we have? Marcus exchanged glances with his assistant engineers, all of whom looked equally baffled by the readings they were seeing. At this rate, maybe 6 hours before the containment field collapses completely. When that happens, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone aboard knew what happened when a quantum drive failed catastrophically. Throughout the ship, the crew worked with desperate efficiency. In the medical bay, Dr. Patricia Yun prepared for casualties while monitoring the increasing radiation levels in the computer core. Lieutenant Commander James Park tried to compensate for the quantum interference that was slowly degrading their systems. Every department reported the same story: equipment failure, system malfunctions, and the growing certainty that conventional solutions would not be enough. But in a small maintenance alcove near the engine room, 13-year-old Riley Chen sat, cross-legged on the deck plating, surrounded by her father's technical manuals and her own hand-drawn diagrams. Unlike the adults around her, she wasn't panicking. Instead, she studied the quantum field readings with the intense focus that had always set her apart from other children her age. Riley had been aboard the Horizon's Edge for 3 months, part of a family integration program that allowed crew members' children to experience life aboard a deep space research vessel, while other kids her age were back on Earth playing virtual games and complaining about homework. Riley had spent her time learning about quantum mechanics, stellar cartography, and advanced engineering principles. Her father had initially been reluctant to bring her along, worried about the dangers of deep space exploration. But Riley's mother had insisted that their daughter deserved to see the universe beyond their home planet. The resonance pattern is wrong, Riley muttered to herself, comparing the current readings to the theoretical models in her father's textbooks. The quantum fields aren't just interfering with the drive, they're synchronizing with it. She pulled out a small tablet and began running calculations, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. Unlike the ship's main computers, which were struggling with the quantum interference, Riley's simple device used basic processing algorithms that remained unaffected by the storm's chaotic energy patterns. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Marcus and his team were running out of options. They had tried every standard procedure in the manual, adjusting the containment field harmonics, rerouting power through backup systems, even attempting to shut down the drive entirely and restart it. Nothing worked. If anything, their efforts seemed to be making the situation worse. Chief called engineering specialist Linda Parker from across the room. The quantum resonance is actually increasing in amplitude. It's like the drive is feeding off the storm's energy somehow. Marcus nodded grimly. That's exactly what's happening. The storm's quantum signature is nearly identical to our own drive frequency. They're creating a standing wave pattern that amplifies both energy sources. Dr. Kim's voice echoed through the engine room from the bridge comm system. Chief Chen, I've been analyzing the storm's quantum signature. The energy patterns are definitely artificial in origin. This isn't a natural phenomenon. You mean someone created this storm? Marcus asked, a chill running down his spine despite the engine room's stifling heat. Not created, exactly, but influenced. The quantum patterns show signs of technological manipulation. It's possible this storm is the result of some kind of experiment or accident involving advanced quantum technology. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been exploring the galaxy for over a century, but they had never encountered technology capable of manipulating quantum fields on such a massive scale. The storm stretched across several light years, its energy output rivaling that of a small star. Captain Vasquez's voice cut through the speculation. Theories can wait, people. Right now, I need solutions. Chief Chen, what do we need to break free from this feedback loop? Marcus looked around at his team, seeing his own desperation reflected in their faces. Honestly, Captain, I don't know. Everything we try just makes the resonance stronger. It's like the storm is designed to counter our technology. Then we need to try something the storm can't counter. Came a young voice from the engine room's entrance. Everyone turned to see Riley standing in the doorway, her tablet in one hand and a collection of her father's tools in the other. Marcus's expression immediately shifted from surprise to parental authority. Riley, you're supposed to be in the safe zone during emergencies. This is no place for Dad. Listen to me, Riley interrupted, stepping into the engine room with the confidence of someone who belonged there. I've been studying the quantum field patterns, and I think I know what's happening. She activated her tablet, projecting a three-dimensional model of the quantum storm and the ship's drive system into the air above her. The holographic display showed the two energy sources locked in a complex dance of interference patterns, their wavelengths perfectly synchronized. The storm isn't just interfering with our drive, Riley explained, manipulating the display to highlight specific resonance points. It's actually synchronized with it. Every time we try to change our quantum frequency, the storm changes too. Match. But that synchronization has a weakness. Marcus studied his daughter's model, his engineering mind immediately grasping the implications. You're talking about quantum phase displacement. If we could shift our frequency by exactly 180 degrees, the wave patterns would cancel each other out instead of amplifying, Riley finished, a slight smile crossing her face. But there's a problem. The displacement has to be precise down to the subatomic level, and it has to be done gradually too. Avoid a cascade failure. Dr. Kim's voice crackled through the CUM system. I'm reading increased quantum activity near the drive chamber. Chief, whatever you're doing, the storm is responding to it. Marcus looked at the readings on his console and felt his heart sink. The storm is adapting faster than we anticipated. Even if we could achieve the phase displacement, we'd have maybe 30 seconds before it compensates for the change. That's not enough time to complete the adjustment using standard procedures. Engineering specialist, Parker observed, voicing what everyone was thinking. Riley nodded, her expression growing serious. That's why it has to be done manually, from inside the quantum chamber itself. Someone has to get close enough to the drive core to make real-time adjustments as the phase displacement occurs. The engine room fell silent, except for the ominous humming of the struggling quantum drive. Everyone understood what Riley was suggesting, and everyone understood why it was impossible. The quantum chamber was flooded with radiation levels that would kill an adult in minutes, even with full protective gear. The access passages were narrow, designed for maintenance robots rather than human technicians. Absolutely not, Marcus said firmly. Riley, I know you want to help, but what you're suggesting is suicide. Not for me, Riley replied quietly. I'm small enough to fit through the maintenance conduits, and the radiation exposure would be minimal if I'm only inside for a few minutes. Plus, I've been studying these systems for months. I know exactly where the manual controls are located. Captain Vasquez's voice interrupted the family discussion. All stations, report. We're reading massive quantum field fluctuations throughout the ship. The lights flickered, and several more consoles erupted. In showers of sparks, the quantum drive's humming grew louder, more discordant, like a massive instrument being played by an amateur musician. Containment field at 70% and falling, Parker reported, her voice tight with controlled panic. At this rate, we have maybe 4 hours before catastrophic failure. Marcus stared at his daughter, seeing her mother's determination in her young face. Riley had always been special, always too smart for her own good, always asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. But this was different. This was life and death for everyone aboard the ship. Even if the plan works, he said slowly, there are a dozen things that could go wrong. The quantum fields could shift unexpectedly. The manual controls could be damaged. The radiation could spike beyond safe levels. Dad, Riley said gently, you taught me that sometimes the impossible is just something no one has tried yet. Every great breakthrough in human history happened because someone was willing to risk everything for an idea that everyone else thought was crazy. She gestured toward the quantum drive, its massive form now pulsing with unstable energy. Humanity didn't get to the stars by playing it safe. We got here by being willing to take chances, to try things that other species considered impossible. That's what makes us human. The ship shuddered again, more violently than before, and alarms began sounding throughout the vessel. Whatever time they had left was running out quickly. Marcus looked around at his team, seeing the same realization in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They had tried everything else. Every conventional solution had failed. If they were going to save the ship, they needed to do something unprecedented, something that went against every safety protocol and regulation in the book. Captain, Marcus said into his cum unit, his voice heavy with the weight of an impossible decision. I need to speak with you immediately. We may have a solution, but... He glanced at his daughter, who stood waiting with the patient confidence of someone who had already accepted the risks. But it's going to require us to trust in something that has never been tried before. The quantum storm raged around them, its alien energy patterns growing stronger with each passing moment. In the depths of the ship, the quantum drive continued, its dangerous dance with forces beyond human understanding. And in the engine room, a father and daughter prepared to risk everything on a plan that just might be crazy enough to work. Asterisk. The daughter's gambit captain, Alina Vasquez, stared at the young girl standing before her in the engine room, trying to process what she had just heard. In her 25 years of commanding starships, she had faced pirates, hostile aliens, stellar phenomena, and equipment failures of every conceivable type. But she had never been asked to stake the lives of her crew on the untested theories of a 13-year-old. Let me understand this correctly, Vasquez said, her voice carefully controlled. You want to send a child into a radiation-flooded quantum chamber to manually adjust our drive system using a theory that exists only in her head. Riley stood straighter, meeting the captain's gaze without flinching. It's not just in my head. Captain, I've run the calculations 17 different ways. The quantum phase displacement will work, but only if the adjustments are made in real time from inside the chamber itself. Dr. Sarah Kim's voice crackled through the comm system from the bridge. Captain, I've reviewed the girl's calculations. Her theoretical framework is sound, but the practical application... double quotes. She paused, clearly struggling with the implications. The risk factors are enormous. Marcus stepped forward, his face drawn with the agony of a parent facing an impossible choice. Captain, I've checked and rechecked every alternative. The quantum storm is adapting to our conventional responses faster than we can implement them. We need something completely outside normal parameters. The ship groaned around them as another wave of quantum energy struck the hull. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the lights dimmed momentarily before the backup systems kicked in. Through the engine room's reinforced windows, they could see the quantum drive chamber pulsing with increasingly unstable energy patterns. Time remaining to containment failure? Vasquez asked, though she already knew the answer would not be encouraging. 3 hours, 47 minutes, engineering specialist Parker reported from her console, and the degradation rate is accelerating. Commander Torres's voice joined the conversation from the bridge. Captain, we're also detecting structural stress throughout the ship. The quantum resonance is causing metal fatigue in the hull plating. Even if the drive doesn't fail catastrophically, we may not survive the physical stress much longer. Riley activated her tablet again, projecting her calculations into the air above the group. The holographic display showed the ship's quantum signature overlaid with the storm's energy patterns, creating a complex web of interference waves. Look at this, she said, manipulating the display to highlight specific resonance points. The storm's quantum signature isn't random. It's actually following a mathematical sequence based on the Fibonacci series, but modified by subatomic particle spin rates. That's why our conventional approaches aren't working. We're trying to impose order on something that already has its own mathematical logic. Dr. Kim's excitement was audible, even through the comm static. She's right, Captain. I'm seeing the same patterns in our sensor data. The storm's behavior follows a predictable mathematical model, but one that's more complex than anything in our databases. Marcus studied his daughter's work with growing amazement. Riley, how did you identify this pattern when our computers couldn't? Because I wasn't looking for the pattern the computers were programmed to find, Riley explained. Human intuition can sometimes recognize patterns that artificial intelligence misses, especially when those patterns are based on organic mathematical principles rather than purely logical ones. Captain Vasquez found herself facing a decision that would define her career and possibly the lives of everyone aboard the Horizon's Edge. She looked around at her crew, seeing fear and determination in equal measure. These people had followed her through countless dangers, trusting her judgment even when the odds seemed impossible. Chief Chen, she said finally, what safety protocols can we implement to minimize the risk? Marcus was already pulling up schematics on his workstation. We can flood the access tunnels with radiation-blocking gel, set up emergency medical stations at every checkpoint, and maintain constant monitoring of her vital signs. Dr. Yoon is already preparing emergency medical protocols. The quantum chamber itself is the biggest problem, Parker added. Even with our best protective gear, an adult would receive lethal radiation exposure within minutes. But Riley's smaller mass and lower exposure time might keep her within survivable limits. Might, Vasquez repeated, emphasizing the uncertainty. And if she's wrong about the phase displacement theory, then we're no worse off than we are now, Riley said quietly. Captain, with all due respect, we're already facing certain death. If we do nothing, at least this way, we have a chance. The captain looked at the young girl, seeing not just determination but a quiet acceptance of the risks involved. There was something almost adult in Riley's expression, a maturity that spoke of someone who had considered all the possibilities and made peace with them. Dr. Kim Vasquez said into her comm unit, I need your professional opinion. Is there any chance this could work? There was a pause before the scientist responded. Theoretically, yes. The quantum phase displacement principle is sound, and Riley's mathematical model appears to account for all the major variables. However, the margin for error is essentially zero if anything goes wrong during the adjustment process. I understand, Vasquez said. She turned to Marcus. Chief, I need your word that you've explored every other option. Marcus nodded slowly. I've been an engineer for 20 years. Captain, I've never encountered a problem I couldn't solve through conventional methods. This storm has stumped my entire team and our best computer systems. Riley's approach is unorthodox, but it's also the only plan that addresses the root cause of our problem, rather than just treating the symptoms. The ship lurched again, more violently than before, and alarms began sounding throughout the vessel. The quantum drive's hum had become a discordant wail that seemed to vibrate through every surface of the ship. Containment field at 6%, Parker reported urgently. Captain, we need to make a decision soon. Vasquez closed her eyes for a moment, weighing the impossible choice before her. When she opened them, her expression was resolute. Chief Chen, prepare your daughter for entry into the quantum chamber. All departments, this is the captain. We are implementing an emergency repair protocol that requires the temporary suspension of standard safety procedures. All non-essential personnel are to report to emergency stations immediately. Riley felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with terror as her father began preparing the equipment she would need. The modified tools were designed for her smaller hands. The radiation sensors calibrated for her body mass. The emergency medical equipment sized for a child rather than an adult. Remember, Marcus said as he helped her into the specially modified protective suit, you'll have approximately minutes inside the chamber before radiation exposure becomes dangerous. The quantum field adjustments need to be made in a specific sequence, and timing is critical. Dr. Patricia Yoon appeared with a medical kit and began running final health checks on Riley. "Your vital signs are strong," she reported, "but I'll be monitoring you constantly. If anything looks wrong, I'm pulling you out immediately, regardless of the mission status." Riley nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. The protective suit was cumbersome despite being scaled to her size, and the various monitoring devices attached to her body made movement awkward. But she had studied the quantum chamber schematics until she could navigate them blindfolded, and her father's tools felt familiar in her hands. "Riley," Captain Vasquez said, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder, "I want you to know that what you're attempting is beyond anything any adult aboard this ship would be willing or able to try. Regardless of the outcome, you're showing the kind of courage that defines the best of humanity." The access tunnel to the quantum chamber was barely wide enough for Riley to crawl through. Its walls lined with conduits carrying power and data to the massive drive system. As she made her way toward the chamber, she could feel the radiation levels increasing despite her protective suit's shielding. "Vital signs stable," Dr. Yun reported through the comm system. "Radiation exposure within acceptable parameters." The tunnel opened into a maintenance alcove just outside the quantum chamber proper. Through the reinforced viewing port, Riley could see the drive core itself, a cylindrical structure 3 stories tall, surrounded by swirling energy patterns that seemed to bend light itself. The manual control console was located on a narrow catwalk that extended into the chamber, placing it directly in the path of the most intense radiation. "Beginning phase displacement sequence," Riley announced, activating her tools and approaching the control console. The quantum fields around her created an almost hypnotic display of colors and patterns, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The first adjustment was simple, a recalibration of the primary quantum resonance frequency. Riley's modified tools interfaced with the console's systems, allowing her to make changes that would normally require a full engineering team. As she worked, she could feel the ship's quantum signature beginning to shift, slowly moving away from perfect synchronization. With the storm, phase displacement at 15%, she reported. "The storm is beginning to respond, but it's still tracking our frequency changes. Radiation levels increasing," Dr. Yoon warned. "You're still within safe parameters, but don't push it." The second adjustment was more complex, requiring Riley to physically enter the quantum field itself to reach a secondary control node. The energy patterns swirled around her, creating a sensation like swimming through liquid light. Her tools responded sluggishly in the intense electromagnetic environment, requiring her to compensate for field distortion effects. "Phase displacement at 45%, she announced, her voice slightly strained by the effort of working in such conditions. "The quantum resonance is definitely weakening." On the bridge, Dr. Kim monitored the storm's response with growing excitement. "Captain, the storm's energy patterns are becoming less coherent. Riley's phase displacement is working, but the storm is still trying to compensate. Vital signs showing stress," Dr. Yun reported. "Heart rate elevated, but still within acceptable range." Riley reached the third control node, the most critical one in the sequence. This adjustment would shift the ship's quantum signature to exactly 180 degrees out of phase with the storm, theoretically cancelling out the destructive interference patterns. But it also required the most precise timing, and any mistake would result in a cascade failure that would destroy the ship instantly. Beginning final phase adjustment, Riley announced, her hands steady despite the exhaustion she was feeling. Dad, I need you to monitor the quantum field harmonics and give me a countdown. Marcus watched his instruments with intense concentration. Field harmonics are aligning. Quantum resonance decreasing. Now, Riley. Riley made the final adjustment. Her modified tools interfacing with the control node's quantum field generators. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, the chaotic energy patterns around her began to stabilize. The ship's quantum signature shifted into perfect opposition with the storm's frequency, and the destructive interference patterns began to cancel each other out. It's working, Dr. Kim shouted from the bridge. The quantum storm is losing coherence. The interference patterns are cancelling out. But Riley wasn't finished yet. The phase displacement was holding, but she could see from her readings that the effect was temporary. The storm would eventually adapt to their new frequency, and they would be back where they started. She needed to create a more permanent solution. Dad, I'm going to try something that's not in the manual, she announced, making her way to a fourth control node that wasn't part of the standard phase displacement protocol. Riley, what are you doing? Marcus asked, alarm in his voice. I'm going to create a quantum echo, she explained, working quickly with her tools. If I can establish a resonance feedback loop in the ship's quantum signature, it will create a continuously shifting phase pattern that the storm can't lock onto. The ship suddenly lurched as the quantum storm made one final attempt to re-establish its destructive synchronization. Alarms sounded throughout the vessel as systems strained under the conflicting forces. Riley felt herself thrown against the control console, her protective suits, systems warning of increased radiation exposure. Riley. Marcus shouted through the comm system. Radiation levels are spiking. You need to get out of there now. But Riley was almost finished. Her hands flew over the control interface, implementing the quantum echo protocol that existed only in her own theoretical framework. The ship's quantum signature began to fluctuate in a complex pattern that made it impossible for the storm to establish a stable lock. Got it, she announced, stepping back from the console as the quantum fields around her began to stabilize. The echo pattern is established. The storm can't synchronize with us anymore. On the bridge, the crew watched in amazement as the quantum storm began to dissipate around them. The chaotic energy patterns that had held them trapped gradually faded, revealing the star-filled void of normal space. Quantum field readings returning to normal, Dr. Kim reported, her voice filled with relief and admiration. The storm is breaking up. We're free. Riley made her way back through the access tunnel, her body shaking with exhaustion and the after-effects of radiation exposure. As she emerged into the engine room, she was greeted by the cheers of the crew and the embrace of her father. That was the most incredible piece of engineering I've ever witnessed, Marcus said, holding his daughter tightly. You saved us all. Captain Vasquez appeared at Riley's side, her expression mixing relief with profound respect. Young lady, what you've accomplished today will be studied in engineering schools for generations. You've proven that human ingenuity and courage can overcome any obstacle, no matter how impossible it seems. As the medical team checked Riley's condition and the engineering crew began full diagnostics on the ship's systems, the Horizon's Edge continued its journey through space. The quantum storm had been defeated not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the brilliant thinking of a young girl who refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. In the weeks that followed, Riley's quantum echo technique would be incorporated into Starship design throughout human space, making vessels less vulnerable to quantum interference. But more importantly, her story would become a testament to the uniquely human ability to find solutions where none seemed to exist, to take risks that others considered foolhardy, and to succeed through sheer determination and innovative thinking. The universe was vast and full of dangers that humanity was only beginning to understand. But as long as there were humans willing to think beyond conventional wisdom, to risk everything for an untested idea, and to face the impossible with courage and creativity, there would always be hope. The horizon's edge sailed on toward new adventures, carrying with it the proof that sometimes the most powerful technology in the universe is the human imagination, and that the greatest discoveries come from those brave enough to try what everyone else says cannot be done.